Welcome once again to Musings by Danon. I'm excited for today's video as we get to talk about one of my favorite archetypes, wheels. The wheel archetype has many different possible commanders. The most powerful is probably still Nekusar, but Xyrus and Riel are both strong contenders for the throne, and Bralin and Shabraz are an awesome pair. For a long time, Arjun and Nekusar were the two most popular wheel commanders, but there are several options out there depending on your personal taste and what other cards you want to run. Before we get started with the deck lists, please like and subscribe for more content. My personal wheel commander is still the Locust God. It's one of my favorite decks to play, and I'm currently in the process of foiling it out. Today we're going to go over two build options for Locust God, a $100 budget version and a non-budget version. There are a lot of differences between the two decks, but the playstyle is very similar. If you can't afford the original Wheel of Fortune, don't worry about it. I was lucky enough to pick up my copy for only $70 a few years ago, but with today's prices, it's almost $400. As always, we'll be comparing our final build against the usual checklist. 50 mana sources split between lands and ramp, usually 37 lands and 13 pieces of ramp, 10 pieces of card advantage, 8 to 10 pieces of spot removal, 2 flexible tutors, 2 to 3 board wipes, and 1 surprise I win card. First of all, let's start with the $100 version. For the core of our deck, we want to focus on creatures that help us draw more cards so our Lord and Savior, the Locust God, can make as many little red-blue hasty boys as possible. So to start that, we've got Nin the Pain Artist, Riel the Everwise, Curiosity Crafter, Sage of the Falls, which does technically let us draw our deck with just him and Locust God, Niv Mizzet Perun, and Windreader Sphinx. Psychosis Crawler and Ominous Seas don't help us draw cards, but like Locust God, they are both cards that love it when we draw cards. We also want cards that help our little 1/1 hasty boys kill our opponent, so we've got Cavalcade of Calamity as basically a damage doubler, and Shared Animosity as our sudden I win card. And we can't forget everyone's favorite enchantment, Impact Tremors. And just in case we do draw through our deck with Sage of the Falls or all of our wheeling, we have a Laboratory Maniac as a backup win con. The second part of our core is wheel effects. Whirlpool Rider, Magus of the Wheel, Whirlpool Warrior, Commit Memory, Game Plan, Fateful Showdown, Channeled Force, Windfall, Flux, Wheel of Misfortune, Collected Defiance, and Tolarian Winds all serve as budget wheel options. While Jace's Archivist, Arjun the Shifting Flame, and Chandra Flamecaller are all repeatable wheels. I thought about adding Dragon Mage as well, but without guaranteed haste effects, I just don't find him to be as good. Moving on to interaction, we'll start with board wipes. We have Earthquake and Magma Quake, which both leave our commander and insect tokens alone, and Blasphemous Act is also a great reset button. If you're facing off against another aggressive deck, a sudden Aetherize is always fun. A lot of commander decks rely on their commander, and when you cast Imprison on the Moon on said commander, their deck doesn't function nearly as well. Narset Parter of Veils is a great threat to throw down, and it can make you the archenemy if you wheel when you have her in play, but she's also a pretty good catch-up mechanic. Additionally, people will swing their creatures at her instead of you, giving you the chance to block favorably and kill pesky creatures with your tokens. For our Counterspell package, we've already discussed Commit Memory, but we also have Counterspell, Arcane Denial, Negate, and Tail's End. This isn't a counter-heavy deck, but you do want to be able to prevent your opponents from comboing off. For spot removal, you have Pongify, Reality Shift, Chaos Warp, and Raven Form, as well as some of our wheel cards pulling double duty, Collective Defiance, Channeled Force, and Fateful Showdown. Expansion Explosion and Izzet Charm are two more cards that are just flexible and very useful depending on the situation. For card advantage, above and beyond our wheels, we have the Wizard class, Frantic Search, Bident of Thassa, Fevered Vision, Reconnaissance Mission, and Teferi's Ageless Insight. With so many wheel effects already in the deck, I wanted to stick with cards that synergized well with the Locust God. For mana acceleration, I included the Diamonds. I'm a big fan of these in non-green decks that are limited to 2 colors, especially when we're on a budget. In a 3-color deck, you can run 3 Talismans and 3 Signets, but your options for 2 mana rocks is limited, especially ones that produce colored mana. We've also got a Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Talisman of Creativity, Izzet Signet, Thought Vessel, Commander Sphere, Felwar Stone, Hedron Archive, Worn Power Stone, Soul Talisman, and for sudden bursts of mana, Battle Hymn. As far as lands go, since we're on a budget, I've included every tap dual land that you can pick up for under $1. Shivan Reef, Swiftwater Cliffs, Temple of Epiphany, Izzet Boilerworks, Izzet Guildgate, Highland Lake, Volatile Fjord, Prismari Campus, and Silver Bluff Bridge. Obligatory Command Tower and Reliquary Tower, of course, as well as a couple of mana fixers in Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, and then basics, 14 islands and 10 mountains. Normally I'd like to include all 3 lab man effects in a deck, but we just didn't have it in the budget this time. So let's take a look at our list and see how we did. 50 mana sources, split between lands and ramp, usually 37 lands and 13 pieces of ramp. In this case, we're at 37 lands and 14 pieces of ramp, but one is a single use. 10 pieces of card advantage. Well, we're at 27, which is way higher than necessary for most decks, but we're in a wheel deck and we want to be constantly drawing a ton of cards. 8 to 10 pieces of spot removal. 13, not counting our 5 counterspells. 2 flexible tutors. 0, so we didn't quite make this one. Since we're on a budget, the cheapest tutor we could hope for is Solve the Equation, and it's already $4. 2 to 3 board wipes. 4, including a single player board wipe in Aetherize. 1 Surprise I Win card. While Labman is an optional win con in a deck that draws a ton of cards, it's not really a surprise. Instead, I believe that Shared Animosity fills this slot nicely. You can check out a link to the full deck list below. At the time of recording, the deck was only $98, and I'm hoping it won't spike too much. I'm not sponsored by TCG Player or Card Kingdom, so I'll tell you how I would buy this deck if I were you. Put the list in both TCG Player and Card Kingdom and check the total cost. I bet you'll be surprised. Most often, card for card, TCG Player prices are cheaper than Card Kingdom prices. But Card Kingdom has free shipping on card orders above a certain point. I believe it's $40. So if you're ordering 1 or 2 cards, it's usually cheaper to go with TCG Player. But for bulk orders, like trying to buy a whole new Commander deck, Card Kingdom is often much cheaper. So now let's take a look at upgrading the deck with more powerful, but also more expensive cards. As I stated earlier, I wanted to have all 3 Labman effects in the deck, so we're going to replace Magus of the Wheel and Windreader Sphinx with Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, and Thassa's Oracle. Arjun the Shifting Flame is getting replaced with Consecrated Sphinx, and we're going to cut Whirlpool Rider and Nin the Pain Artist for Snapcaster Mage and Tooth the Imaginary Friend. Wrapping up upgrades to our core theme, we're going to cut Curiosity Crafter for Terror of the Peaks, Flux gets replaced by Perforos, God of the Forge, Game Plan becomes Rite of Replication, which is another sudden I win card when you kick it and target Perforos, or you can usually kill a single player by targeting Terror of the Peaks. I'm personally using Wheel of Fortune over Collective Defiance, but if that's out of your budget, Collective Defiance works just fine. As our final wheel, I'll be cutting Hedron Archive for Echo of Eons. Now, my personal build runs a lot of interaction, especially counterspells. I'm running both Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots instead of Fateful Showdown and Chatteled Force. Earthquake and Magma Quake get replaced by Mana Drain and Force of Negation. Cyclonic Rift comes in over Aetherize, and Izzet Charm is replaced by Force of Will. Raven Form becomes a Braid, Vandal Blast replaces Pongify, Wizard Class becomes Fierce Guardianship, Fevered Visions becomes Nimble Obstructionist, Reality Shift gets traded for Disallow, Tail's End is now a Deflecting Swat, and Imprison of the Moon becomes Narset's Reversal. Now, we started cutting into our draw and wheel package quite a bit, but we do have some very solid draw spells that we're going to add, namely Rhystic Study, which replaces Reconnaissance Mission, Bident of Thassa becomes Skull Clamp, Frantic Search becomes Sensei's Divining Top, Soul Talisman is getting pulled for Underworld Breach, and Worn Power Stone becomes Scroll Rack. Rounding out our card advantage package are Mystical Tutor and Teferi, Master of Time. Both are coming in over an island and a mountain, respectively. Our mana ramp package is also getting a serious upgrade. Specifically, Battle Hymn, which is an instant, is getting replaced by the enchantment Mana Echoes. Commander Sphere becomes Chromatic Lantern, our diamonds are getting replaced by medallions, and Ashnod's Altar will replace another basic land. And now for lands. So far, we've cut 3 basic lands for other cards, bringing our total down to 34. As far as upgrades go, we have Scalding Tarn, Flooded Strand, and Fabled Passage coming in. We'll be dropping Terramorphic Expanse, as well as a couple more basics. Fiery Islet comes in over Highland Lake, Volatile Fjord becomes Steam Vents, Izzet Boilerworks becomes a Training Center, Mana Confluence over Izzet Guildgate, Prismari Campus becomes Desolate Lighthouse, Silver Bluff Bridge gets replaced by Spire Bluff Canal, Sulphur Falls replaces Swiftwater Cliffs, and Cascade Bluffs and Temple of the False God each replace a couple of basics. Now, this version of Locust God will cost you about $1,500 to build. Please understand that I didn't just go out and drop $1,500 on this deck. My original version started very close to the budget version above, and slowly, over the course of 3 years or so, I upgraded the deck to where it is now. I'd recommend that you do the same if you're wanting a wheel commander. As far as card choices, I wanted my deck to be strong enough to handle playing at high-level tables, but not quite CEDH. I included a few combos, but mostly focused on interaction and counterspells. It's not a nice deck, but it's a lot of fun to play. If you have a version of Locust God, please link it in the comments below. I'm always happy to see other people's takes on one of my favorite commanders. Thanks for tuning in. I was excited to talk about Locust God today. I rarely get to play it at my LGS because of how strong my deck has become, but it is a really fun deck to play. Once again, a huge shout out to my editor Cute Stuff. I couldn't make these videos without her. If you'd like to hire her to edit your own videos, there's a link to her Fiverr page below. Please like and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you all again next time.